Go spend Christmas with her. By morning, she was gone. At 11:47 on Christmas Eve, Daniel Carter heard the words that would haunt him for the rest of his life: go spend Christmas with her. His pregnant wife, Emma, said it with a trembling smile while standing beside the Christmas tree they had decorated together. She was 8 months pregnant, exhausted, and carrying more than just their unborn child. She was carrying a secret she believed would either save their marriage or destroy it forever. Daniel thought she was giving him permission to visit another woman. He did not understand that Emma was actually saying goodbye. By sunrise, Emma was gone. The strange part was that there was no argument, no slammed door, no dramatic goodbye. She had simply disappeared, leaving behind a half-wrapped baby gift, a cup of cold tea, and a small envelope on the kitchen table with Daniel's name written across it in her handwriting. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of love to heal even the deepest wounds, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs a little hope today, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. Your support helps us bring more emotional stories like this to you. Daniel stared at the envelope for nearly a minute before opening it. His hands were shaking so badly that he almost tore the paper in half. Inside was a single sentence: I hope someday you understand why I had to leave before you could ask me to stay. He read it 3 times. Then he looked around their quiet home. The Christmas lights were still blinking. The stockings were hanging above the fireplace. A tiny white onesie was draped over the arm of the sofa because Emma had been folding baby clothes the night before. Everything looked normal. Everything except Emma was missing. Daniel called her phone. It rang once. Then went straight to voicemail. He called again. Nothing. By 6 in the morning, panic had replaced confusion. By 7, he was driving through streets covered in fresh snow, checking the places she loved, the little coffee shop where she sometimes worked on her laptop, her mother's old house, the hospital where she planned to deliver their baby. Nobody had seen her. And Daniel could not stop thinking about the woman Emma had told him to spend Christmas with. Her name was Rachel. Rachel had been Daniel's first love. They had dated in college, dreamed about marriage, and separated after Daniel accepted a job across the country. Their relationship had ended badly, but not because they stopped caring about each other. Life had simply pulled them in different directions. Years later, Rachel returned to town after losing her husband, and Daniel had occasionally helped her with legal paperwork related to his company. Emma knew about Rachel. She had always known. But recently, Rachel had been going through a difficult time. Her father was dying, and she had no family nearby. Daniel had promised to visit her on Christmas Eve because she would otherwise spend the holiday alone. Emma had seemed unusually quiet when he told her. Daniel remembered asking if she was jealous. She had smiled and said no. Now, standing in the empty kitchen, Daniel realized that her smile had never reached her eyes. He had assumed Emma trusted him. He had never imagined that she was preparing to disappear. The truth was that Daniel and Emma had not always been this distant. They had met 3 years earlier at a charity event. Emma had been serving coffee and cake to volunteers, while Daniel had been one of the wealthy sponsors. She had spilled coffee on his expensive suit and immediately apologized so sincerely that he started laughing. She had been different from everyone he knew. She never cared about his money. She cared about whether people were kind. She cared about old people eating alone, children who needed winter coats, and stray animals wandering through the city. Daniel fell in love with her because she made him want to become a better man. They married a year later. When Emma became pregnant, Daniel thought life had finally given him everything he had ever wanted. But somewhere during the pregnancy, things began to change. Daniel's company started struggling after a major investment collapsed. He worked longer hours. He came home exhausted. Emma, meanwhile, became increasingly anxious about the future. She had always been independent, but pregnancy made her afraid of being abandoned. Daniel thought her fears were temporary. He told her everything would be fine. He told her they had money. He told her he loved her. But sometimes love spoken too quickly sounds like reassurance instead of understanding. Emma needed Daniel to listen. He was too busy trying to fix everything. Then came the night Rachel called. Her father had taken a turn for the worse. Daniel promised he would come. Emma was sitting on the couch, folding tiny baby socks. She looked at him and said, "Go spend Christmas with her." Daniel remembered laughing awkwardly. He asked what she meant. Emma only looked down at the socks and said that Rachel needed someone. Daniel told her he would visit for an hour and come home. Emma nodded. But then she quietly said something he had forgotten until that morning. She said, "Sometimes people need someone beside them when everyone else has gone." Daniel thought she was talking about Rachel. Now he wondered if she had been talking about herself. He returned home after searching for hours and found himself standing in the nursery. The room was unfinished. One wall was painted pale blue. A crib stood beneath the window. A stuffed rabbit sat inside it, waiting for the baby who had not yet arrived. On the dresser was a framed ultrasound picture. Daniel picked it up. Their child was smiling in a way only parents could imagine. Daniel's eyes filled with tears. He whispered, "Where did you go, Emma?" Then he noticed something behind the frame. A folded hospital document. He opened it. It was an appointment confirmation for the following morning. Emma had been scheduled for a medical examination because her doctor was concerned about her blood pressure. Daniel's heart dropped. She had never mentioned it. He immediately called the hospital. The receptionist hesitated before saying that Emma had cancelled the appointment 2 days earlier. Daniel froze. Why? The receptionist said Emma had told the doctor she would not be in town. Not be in town. Daniel sat down. Where could she have gone? He remembered the envelope. He ran back to the kitchen and searched every drawer, every cabinet, every place Emma might have hidden something. Finally, beneath a stack of old photographs, he found another envelope. This one was addressed to their unborn child. Daniel couldn't breathe. He opened it. Inside was a letter Emma had written for the baby. She wrote about the first time she felt the baby move. She wrote about the tiny kicks that made her laugh in the middle of the night. She wrote about how much she loved the father, even when she was angry with him. And then came the sentence that broke Daniel. "I don't want my child to grow up believing that love means staying where you are no longer wanted." Daniel dropped the letter. He finally understood. Emma believed Daniel still loved Rachel. And worse, she believed she had become an obstacle between them. But why? Daniel searched his memory. Then he remembered something. 3 weeks earlier, he had received an email from an unknown account. It contained photographs. Daniel and Rachel standing outside a restaurant. Rachel holding his arm. Daniel helping her into a car. Nothing romantic had happened, but the photographs had been taken from an angle that made everything look different. Daniel had deleted the email without thinking. Had Emma seen it? Had someone sent it to her? He searched his computer. The email was still in the trash. The sender's address was unfamiliar. Daniel's heart began racing. He recovered the message. There was only one sentence. "You should know what your husband is doing behind your back." Daniel stared at it. Someone had deliberately tried to destroy his marriage. But who? Then he remembered the one person who had been unusually interested in his personal life. His business partner, Marcus. Marcus had been pressuring Daniel to sell his company for months. Daniel had refused because the company had been built by his father and carried enormous sentimental value. If Daniel disappeared from the company temporarily, Marcus could gain control. And Marcus knew about Rachel. He knew enough to manipulate the situation. Daniel immediately called him. Marcus answered with a calm voice. When Daniel asked if he had sent Emma the photographs, there was silence. Then Marcus said something Daniel would never forget. He said, "You should have listened to your wife when she gave you permission to leave." Daniel's blood ran cold. "Where is she?" Marcus laughed quietly. "I don't know." But Daniel knew he was lying. The next several hours became a race against time. Daniel contacted a private investigator and traced the account that had sent the photographs. It led to a temporary phone purchased in cash. The last signal came from a small mountain town nearly 3 hours away. Daniel drove there through a snowstorm. He did not care about the roads. He did not care about the company. He did not care about anything except finding Emma and their baby. When he arrived, he found an old roadside motel. The manager recognized Emma immediately. She had arrived the previous night. She had been alone. She had looked frightened. But she had not stayed. She had left early that morning in a taxi. The manager remembered one thing. Emma had asked about a small chapel near the lake. Daniel drove there. The chapel stood at the edge of a frozen lake, surrounded by pine trees covered in snow. And there, sitting beneath the chapel's wooden porch, was Emma. She was wrapped in a thick coat, one hand resting protectively over her belly. Daniel stopped several feet away. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Emma looked up. Her eyes filled with tears. Daniel wanted to run to her. But he stopped himself. He had spent too long assuming he knew what she needed. This time, he waited. Finally, he said he was sorry. Not the quick kind of apology. Not the kind people give because they want an argument to end. He told her he was sorry for every night he came home too late, every time he dismissed her fears, every time he made her feel like she was competing with someone who wasn't even part of his life anymore. He told her Rachel had never been his choice. Emma had been. She always had been. Then he told her about the photographs. He told her someone had manipulated them. He told her Marcus had admitted knowing about the situation. Emma listened quietly. When Daniel finished, she looked down at her hands. She admitted that Marcus had visited her 2 weeks earlier. He had shown her the same photographs. He had told her Daniel was planning to leave her after the baby was born. Emma had not believed him at first. But then Daniel kept working late. He kept answering Rachel's calls. And when she tried to ask him about it, he always said he was too tired to talk. Little by little, doubt became fear. Then fear became certainty. Emma thought leaving was the only way to protect herself and the baby from being abandoned later. Daniel's eyes filled with tears. He told her she had never been unwanted. She was his home. The baby was his future. And Rachel was simply someone from his past who needed temporary help. Emma cried then. Not because everything was fixed. But because for the first time in months, she felt heard. Daniel sat beside her. He did not touch her until she reached for his hand. They sat there in silence while snow fell around them. Then Emma whispered that she was sorry too. She had believed disappearing would make things easier. But all she had done was leave the person she loved terrified. Daniel squeezed her hand. He told her they would not solve everything that day. They would need counseling. They would need honest conversations. They would need to rebuild trust. But they could do it. Together. That evening, they returned home. The Christmas tree was still glowing. The presents were still waiting. But something felt different. Daniel placed the letter to their unborn child beneath the tree. He told Emma that someday, when their child was old enough, they would explain that their family had almost broken because two people were afraid to say what they truly felt. And they would also explain that love was not about never making mistakes. It was about having the courage to face them. A week later, Marcus was removed from the company after evidence proved he had deliberately manipulated the situation. Daniel also discovered that Marcus had been trying to force him into selling the company by creating personal chaos in his life. Rachel's father passed away peacefully. Daniel attended the funeral, but this time he brought Emma with him. Not because Emma needed to supervise him. Because she trusted him enough to stand beside him. Months later, their daughter was born on a bright spring morning. They named her Grace. When Daniel first held her, he cried. Emma watched him from the hospital bed. She smiled and whispered that Grace had already changed their lives. Daniel kissed their daughter's tiny forehead and remembered that terrible Christmas morning when he thought he had lost everything. He had believed Emma's disappearance was the end of his family. Instead, it became the moment that forced him to finally see what he had almost destroyed. Years later, Grace would ask why there were 2 Christmas ornaments in their family tree with the dates of the same Christmas written on them. Daniel would look at Emma. Emma would smile. And together, they would tell their daughter that one Christmas taught them the most important lesson of their lives. Sometimes people leave because they don't feel loved. Sometimes people stay silent because they are afraid of the truth. And sometimes, if you are lucky, love gives you one more chance to listen. That Christmas Eve, Emma had said, "Go spend Christmas with her." Daniel thought she was sending him away. But she was actually asking one final question without knowing how to say it. "Will you choose me?" And by the time he found her the next morning, he finally understood the answer. He had chosen her all along. He had simply forgotten how to show it. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. Sometimes a simple share can help a story reach someone who desperately needs its message. And before we end, I have one special request. Comment, "Love deserves a second chance," if you believe that honest communication, forgiveness, and kindness can save relationships that seem impossible to repair. Because sometimes the person standing quietly beside us isn't asking for perfection. They're only asking to be seen. And sometimes the greatest Christmas miracle isn't finding something underneath the tree. It's finding your way back to the person you almost lost. Emma didn't disappear because she stopped loving Daniel. She disappeared because she loved him enough to believe he deserved happiness, even if that happiness wasn't with her. But Daniel's journey taught him something far more important. Real love isn't choosing someone once. It's choosing them again and again, especially when life becomes difficult, especially when fear creates misunderstandings, and especially when walking away seems easier than staying and fighting for each other. And that Christmas morning, when Daniel finally held Emma's hand again, he understood that sometimes the greatest gift isn't a perfect marriage. It's the chance to begin again.